We are stepped out upon the world stage now, with the fate of human dignity in our hands. Blood's been spilled to afford us this moment now.
Well, give that man an Oscar. While you're at it, give him 12. That is how many Academy Award nominations Steven Spielberg's Lincoln movie nabbed today. A movie that heralds a president who surrounded himself with a cabinet full of rivals and not full of yes men. Something maybe this president should consider. Presidential historian Jane Hampton Cook says it works for Abe. You know, Jane, it's easy to say cabinets are full of yes men, but very rarely are they full of those who directly challenge a president, or worse, in the case of Lincoln's cabinet, ran against him for president. Why is that beneficial to have folks like that in a cabinet?
Well, oftentimes it gives a very diverse sense of opinions. You know, Lincoln could draw from very different points of view. And really, Lincoln became president when the Republicans were a startup party. So he needed rivals within his own party just to solidify his presidency. And so sometimes that diverse opinion can really give a president many things to consider and then hopefully make the best decision in the long run. You
know, this president started off, I thought, regardless of your opinions of Hillary Clinton, on the right foot by reaching out to a challenger, in that case, to be such a prominent cabinet secretary. But after that, it sort of went by the wayside. There are a lot of folks who say some of these latest choices, particularly in the Treasury with Jack Lew, sort of reconfirms this business as usual crowd. Does that hurt him longer run with folks who want to see big changes, or could these folks surprise us?
Well, a yes man can surprise you. For example, George W. Bush brought in Paul O'Neill. He was favored by Wall Street and Capitol Hill to be his Treasury Secretary. And then Bush later wrote that Mr. O'Neill did not share his enthusiasm for tax cuts. And it's one thing to say to the president, I disagree with you on this, and to do it directly. But in O'Neill's case, he went around belittling the president, and it got back to Bush. So it doesn't work that way either. You have to give your difference of opinion directly to the president, and that's when it works the best.
With Lincoln, and of course this is now the stuff of historical lore, with his cabinet and those who challenged him, he would hear them all out, and ultimately he would, as we saw in that case, they're forcing this amendment of abolishing slavery, he would slam his fist on the table and let it be clear old folksy Abe could also be old temper tantrum Abe. So there is ultimately a place where the buck stops, and that is with the president. But the cabinet itself has to inspire, does it not? I mean, they have to stand out for who they are themselves, don't they?
That's right, and a cabinet member is often positioning himself to maybe run for president. So sometimes, you know, that rivalry happens and emerges, but a president is really best served by someone like Ted Sorensen. He was the anti-yes man for Kennedy, but Kennedy really trusted him. And if he needed to hear a difference of opinion, he would bring in speechwriter and political advisor Ted Sorensen, because he would give him the unvarnished truth. And Kennedy really appreciated that.
You know, I also think when you go outside the Petri dish, you can be richly rewarded. You know, it needn't be necessarily a businessman for Treasury or someone who's fought in the trenches to be a defense secretary, as this designate has. But it does help to have someone who comes in there with some practical knowledge of the field that they're going to be overseeing. And what worries a lot of folks about Jack Lew is his academic credentials notwithstanding, his Washington experience notwithstanding, he doesn't bring that experience to perhaps this most important of economic jobs.
Well, it certainly looks like Jack Lew is getting a promotion, and that may be part of, you know, the issue and the tension. And he also has rubbed some people the wrong way in Washington. I think that's part of it too. He's not the most easygoing, likable fellow, so that's probably hurting him among those who are, you know, uncomfortable with his nomination.
Do you think, you know, they would always say about John Kennedy's cabinet that it was an Ivy League crowd, not that somehow prevented the Bay of Pigs and some other disasters and all, but that the more eclectic and different and highbrow you get, the more you try to aim for the cream of the crop, the better you'll be. Do you agree with that?
Well, there's something to be said for that. But, you know, Kennedy brought in Dean Rusk to be Secretary of State. He thought that would bring in some diversity of opinion, but he didn't really like Rusk. He called him the lowest common denominator. And he was disappointed because it later came out that Rusk opposed the Bay of Pigs. And others within the cabinet just didn't speak up against it, and what a difference it could have made if they had had the courage to say, you know, Mr. President, we don't think this is a good idea. And so sometimes, you know, that happens too, even among the cream of the crop. You've got to have courage and you've got to have smarts. You need both.
Yeah. What's that also? You got to risk losing your job to make a difference in your job. Good job, Jane. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.